Sui's mainnet went live just 2 years ago, and in honor of its birthday, I'm putting out an educational video about everything you need to know as far as the token unlocks and circulation aspect of tokenomics. And if you know anything about crypto, when you do due diligence into a crypto project, understanding the tokenomics is crucial. And so without further ado, let's dive into the tokenomics of Sui. Let's go. So let's start with the Sui token supply and circulation. And there's a lot to cover here because as you can see, this chart appears a lot when you do research and due diligence into different cryptos. Now, let's see if we can figure out exactly what the heck we're looking at here. So just to remind everyone, 10 billion is the maximum supply of Sui that will ever be, and the circulating supply is 3.33 billion Sui at the moment. So you might say to yourself, wow, that's only 33% of the total amount of max supply, which means we're going to get diluted. Nearly 70% is going to enter circulation in the next couple of years. Well, if you said that, you're wrong, because we actually see the token unlock schedule here, and we see that from now until April 2030, there will be nearly 5 billion Sui that is going to be unlocked. So why isn't it going to be the 10 billion? Well, the reality is that Sui and the team behind Sui is not even sure exactly how they're going to unlock the other 5 billion Sui after April 2030. They're still deciding that. This unallocated status provides the Sui Foundation with a ton of flexibility to adapt to future network needs and growth strategies. Because remember, they're starting out as GameFi, but the reality is they want to be a player in DeFi and beyond. They have a lot of interesting projects that they've unleashed that are actually garnering a lot of attention as far as storage solutions, among other things, but we'll dedicate other videos to that. So the fact that we're unsure of how the post-2030 token release is going to occur is good and bad. So it's good because maybe they have long-term vision, and this will allow them to sustain development and innovation strategies well into the future. However, on the flip side, the eventual introduction of these tokens into circulation could impact market dynamics depending on how and when they decide to be allocated. But I do want to point out, there will never be more than 10 billion Sui. That being said, we could see that this chart here has different categories, or I suppose colors of sections as you see here. Now, the way to read this chart is you start at 0, which was April 2023. Remember, the mainnet of Sui is just 2 years old, so it has not been around for a long time. But you could see here there was a bit of a cliff situation, and then we saw a linear upwards trend of introduction of Sui, and then another cliff here that occurred around April 2024. Now, after that, we're expecting to see a very gradual incline, and then it's actually after around April of 2026, it will be a very slow introduction of these tokens. This is the sweet spot. Post next halving cycle of Bitcoin, we're likely to see some sort of monstrous rise in Sui, and so I'm really excited about potentially holding long term between 2026 and 2030. I'm not sure I want to hold past 2030 yet because I want to see what the plans are for the distribution of the 5 billion tokens that they plan to allocate at whatever schedule they choose to do so at. Now that you understand that this is the total amount of Sui that they're showing with this top line here that's going to be introduced, let's discuss these different colored sections right here. So this light blue section and the teal section here is for Series A and Series B venture capital funding rounds. Now, what the heck does that mean? Well, let's start with the light blue. This is your Series A. So this was the first major round of investment. So investors bought Sui tokens early, usually at a very low price. They're certainly not selling it to them as you're buying for the price of whatever you bought it at on Coinbase or one of these other exchanges. They're buying it on the cheap because they are helping to actually fund Mysten Labs, the company behind Sui. Now, after that, we had a Series B. This was a later funding round with possibly even more favorable terms for Mysten Labs due to the progress made. So the people that get rewarded the most is probably Series A, because once you have a lot of funding and you're starting to get things off the ground, or at least have a great plan in place and strategic partnerships, you can then pitch it to the later funding rounds at the subsequent funding rounds for a better rate, because it is already starting to get off the ground. So these investors also receive Sui tokens over time and at a cheap rate. And now something important to point out here, you see how for the first year, we don't even see the light blue and the teal? Well, that's because for the Series A and the Series B investors, the tokens granted to these investors became available to them gradually, not all at once, to prevent market dumping. They didn't want people to probably invest and then just dump it. So there was probably like a 1-year lockup period before they can go ahead and get it vested and have access to these actual tokens. So that's probably why you're seeing the steep rise right here. The interesting thing to note is that the price didn't really suffer much even with the introduction of so many of these tokens into circulation, probably because the people holding them actually believe in the project, and so they're okay holding it for the long term or maybe the short term, but they certainly didn't dump as soon as they got a chance to. Now, this tiny sliver over here in orange, these are tokens allocated for Mysten Labs itself. It's used to support the company's operations, growth, and probably the development of the overall Sui ecosystem. And as well, you could see that the tokens were released over time to fund development, hire talent, yada yada. Speaking of hiring talent, I found this here, which is interesting, that Mysten Labs is currently actually looking for a head of Treasury. So if you have all of these qualifications right here, you might want to apply, because the pay seems like it's going to be pretty darn good. Take a look here. It says compensation is anywhere between $175,000 and $255,000, and probably you're going to get some Sui there as well. Now, the purple section right here, that's actually detailing the community reserve. And what I really like about the Sui website is it's really good at detailing a lot of information. So you could see if we scroll down, it says, how will the community reserve be utilized? And it says here that it will be used across a variety of community programs, including delegation program. So the foundation will help bootstrap community-run validators and will promote and event stakes distribution across network validators by delegating its stake to aligned third parties. There will be a lot of grant programs. There will be research and development. So the foundation will support the further advancement of the Sui protocol, ensuring that its technological edge remains true even in the far future. Then in the yellow, we have the early contributors. Now, these early contributors or early adopters are the individuals and entities that helped build Sui in its early days. These are your engineers and advisors. They were also compensated with Sui tokens, typically with long lockups and vesting schedules to reward loyalty. And these are also a lot of people that were testing the testnet. And so the next section is the Community Access Program. Now, I actually didn't know what the Community Access Program was, but lucky for me, Mysten Labs did a good job over here explaining everything below. So if we select what is the Community Access Program, it states that the Sui Community Access Program allowed early contributors to the Sui ecosystem an opportunity to buy Sui tokens. These contributors needed Sui to run the apps and services they had been developing. That makes sense. Their early efforts before mainnet launch showed their dedication to and interest in supporting Sui. If you're not sure what a mainnet launch is, that's just when the blockchain goes live in all its intents and purposes and it's ready to be used. And you could see that before May 3rd of 2023, Sui was on something called a testnet, and that's during the development stages. And last but not least, we have stake subsidies here, and these are tokens that were used to incentivize network validators and delegators, especially during the early stages of the network. And this probably included validator staking rewards, delegation incentives, and possibly even subsidies to encourage staking adoption. Now, I'm going to cover in a different video what it takes to actually be a validator on the Sui blockchain, and it's actually a lot more than you think. So again, right now, the best thing we can do if we're interested in Sui is just buy Sui at its current price of whatever it's trading at. But I do want to stress that the reality is that people that really make bank off of these projects are people that join the community access program, right? These are the participants that built dApps and tools or infrastructures on the test net. They engaged with the community, provided early feedback. Maybe they got involved and were an employee at Mysten Labs. Maybe these were the people that were lucky and fortunate enough to have a ton of money and deep pockets so that they could go ahead and invest in Mysten Labs and Sui and be one of these Series A or Series B round investors. So again, I mean, there's nothing we could do about that. We are the proletariat class. I mean, I suppose most people watching this, we are not the top 1%. And so we're just trying to figure it out and invest some money for the long term and pick the winners. That's what we could do to really generate wealth. And who knows, maybe later on we make enough wealth that for some projects, maybe we can partake in this Series A, Series B type of round of investments, regardless if it is a crypto company or just a regular company that's on the stock exchange. But for now, keep it real, keep it in perspective. We're all bottom feeders here. We are trying to scoop something up and hope that it is a good long-term investment. But who are we buying from? When we buy at, let's say, $3.45 that it trades for today, who exactly are we buying from? We're buying from someone that probably has the token due to one of these reasons, and they're actually selling it to lock in profits. That's the reality of the situation. So with that being said, let me know which topic about Sui interests you in the comment section, and I'll aim to dedicate a little bit of time to go ahead and do the research and put out some quality educational content for all of you to enjoy. Appreciate all of you for sticking around for the majority of this video, and hopefully I'll see some of you in the next one.